In a world saturated with noise, distractions, and half-baked truths, where stories are spun faster than facts can breathe, and public opinion is shaped long before evidence even sees the light. We're not here to stir outrage. We're not playing sides, pushing narratives, or chasing clicks. We're here to cut through the fog, to bring the truth, raw, real, and often uncomfortable. Our judgments are built on transparency, logic, and actual evidence, not on assumptions, not on headlines, and definitely not on emotional bait. We're not here to tell you what to think. We're here to give you everything you need so you can decide what's real. Welcome to Truth Unfiltered with Critical Thinkers, where the truth is louder than the mob. In a world wired for outrage, all it takes is a whisper. Not evidence, not truth, just a whisper, and a life can unravel. Today, we unravel one of the most haunting examples of that truth. He was the nation's darling, a household name, the kind of star whose name sparked pride, whose performances crossed borders, whose image stood for excellence, humility, and integrity. But in March 2025, all it took was a YouTube video, vague, unverified, and anonymous, to drag Kim Soo Hyun into the eye of a media firestorm. A scandal with no proof, no verified source, and no proven crime. Yet, it was a scandal that left behind real damage. What happens when speculation outweighs facts? When silence becomes complicity? When even innocence isn't enough to survive public scrutiny? In this episode of Truth Unfiltered, we're peeling back the layers of a scandal that never should have been, and asking the uncomfortable questions the media refused to confront. We'll trace the architecture of reputational destruction, examine the toxic marriage of fan culture and online hate, and expose how celebrity narratives are twisted, sold, and consumed in a digital coliseum. This isn't just about Kim Soo Hyun. It's about power, it's about ethics, and it's about all of us, the audience, the media, the mob. In the modern age of social media and viral content, the line between truth and spectacle has blurred beyond recognition. Scandals are no longer about factual accuracy or legal justice. They are about public perception, emotional response, and the speed at which narratives can be constructed and consumed. This has never been more evident than in the case of Kim Soo Hyun, one of South Korea's most beloved and respected celebrities, whose reputation was brought into question despite clear, factual evidence disproving the accusations made against him. In March 2025, the Sero Research Institute, a notorious YouTube channel known for its controversial exposés and reckless disregard for journalistic ethics, accused Kim Soo Hyun of dating the then underage actress Kim Soo Hyun in 2015. The claims, steeped in ambiguity and supported only by flimsy, now proven false evidence, were sensationalized for maximum shock value. These accusations were eventually debunked by multiple sources and proven to be entirely false. However, the machinery of public opinion had already been set in motion. Despite the factual collapse of the story, Kim Soo Hyun remained under intense scrutiny, and his career and personal life were forever marked by the residue of scandal. But what are the deeper socio-political and psychological underpinnings that allowed this scandal to metastasize in the public consciousness even after it was disproven? Why did the public continue to speculate? Why did major media outlets and fans remain silent or complicit? And why, in a nation that prides itself on legalism and propriety, was rumor allowed to override reason? To answer these questions, we must examine 5 intersecting forces that perpetuated the scandal long after its factual foundations had crumbled. The weaponization of ambiguity and anonymity in media, the exploitation of Kim Soo Hyun's star persona, South Korea's complex relationship with public morality, the emotional manipulation embedded in media storytelling, and the toxic role of fan culture and online hate mobs. Together, these forces not only sustained the scandal, but revealed unsettling truths about the nature of fame, justice, and truth in a hyper-connected world. One of the most alarming aspects of the Kim Soo Hyun scandal was the media's reliance on anonymous sources and vague, unverified evidence to construct a narrative compelling enough to captivate an emotionally charged audience. In an age when the line between investigative journalism and speculative gossip has been dangerously eroded, Sero's strategy was simple but effective. Flood the zone with suggestive content and let the audience fill in the blanks. The claim that an underaged Kim Soo Hyun was in a romantic relationship with Kim Soo Hyun was buttressed by dubious elements. A screenshot of a handwritten diary, a photograph of them as a couple taken in 2019 when both of them were legal adults, and a series of suggestive but ultimately meaningless photos. None of these elements, taken individually or collectively, were sufficient to hold up in a court of law or even withstand basic journalistic scrutiny. Yet, in the court of public opinion, they proved more than enough to spark outrage and suspicion. Anonymous sources are a powerful, double-edged sword in media. On one hand, they can provide protection for whistleblowers and expose systemic abuses. On the other, when used irresponsibly, they allow bad actors to launder unverified claims through the appearance of journalistic legitimacy. Garo Sero leaned heavily on this tactic, presenting hearsay as hard evidence and using phrases like "it is said" or "according to insiders" to lend authority to their speculations. This method gives viewers a false sense of access to privileged knowledge, making them feel like insiders to a dark truth, when in fact they are simply being manipulated. The public's reaction reveals a deeper, troubling dynamic, a willingness to accept innuendo and inference in place of facts. This isn't simply due to gullibility, but a function of emotional conditioning. The public has been trained by reality TV, clickbait news, and algorithmic platforms to react before they reflect. The mere possibility of scandal becomes more gripping than any truth, and the longer the truth takes to emerge, the more entrenched the false narrative becomes. The reputational damage once seeded becomes irreversible, regardless of retractions, clarifications, or apologies. This isn't journalism, it's reputational assassination disguised as entertainment. In the world of celebrity gossip and tabloid reporting, the illusion of wrongdoing often holds more power than the fact of innocence. Garo Sero did not need to prove anything. They only needed to create doubt, to suggest that something might have happened. That suggestion, laced with emotional cues and strategic ambiguity, was enough to shift public perception against Kim Soo Hyun, at least temporarily. The photo of the Kim Soo Hyun's handwritten note, which supposedly hinted at a romantic entanglement between Kim Soo Hyun and a man who was legally an adult when she was underaged, was presented with dramatic flair, but it lacked critical details, context, authorship. Kim Soo Hyun wasn't mentioned, and why, and authenticity. Even if genuine, its contents were so vague that they could apply to virtually any individual. The photo was claimed to be from 2015 and was used for the kind of meaningless speculation that thrives on confirmation bias and emotional projection. Yet these thin threads were enough to create a tapestry of insinuation, a plausible story with just enough ambiguity to feel real. The strategy here is not new, but its effectiveness has been amplified by the speed and scale of digital media. When stories go viral, they take on a life of their own. Retractions are rarely as viral as accusations. In a landscape flooded with content, audiences gravitate toward the story that feels emotionally satisfying rather than the one that is factually accurate. And the emotional core of this scandal, betrayal, innocence tainted, a national treasure exposed, was irresistible. In the case of Kim Soo Hyun, this dynamic played out in devastating fashion. Even after the story was debunked, the damage lingered. Social media continued to circulate the original claims. Some fans abandoned him, brands hesitated, casting rumors shifted. He was no longer just a man or an actor or even a victim of false reporting. He became a cipher for public anxiety, morality, and media spectacle. Kim Soo Hyun was not merely a popular actor. He was the embodiment of the perfect son, the diligent artist, the unblemished icon of South Korea's soft power on the global stage. His rise to fame was not built solely on talent, but on a carefully curated image, one that aligned with cultural expectations of masculinity, humility, and integrity. As a result, his public identity was more than aspirational. It was ideological. This image, paradoxically, made him uniquely vulnerable. The higher a star rises, the more precarious their position becomes. Kim's spotless public record, rather than shielding him, painted a target on his back. In the scandal economy, a fall from grace is more lucrative than a steady reign. To discredit someone so widely adored is to guarantee attention, clicks, and revenue. For malicious actors, Kim Soo Hyun represented the ultimate prize, a beloved figure whose downfall would shock and captivate the nation. Moreover, the burden of perfection is a trap. In South Korea, where the entertainment industry is rigidly hierarchical and unforgiving, any deviation from ideal behavior, real or imagined, can lead to brutal consequences. The very structures that helped elevate Kim to stardom offered no protection when the tide turned. The industry's silence in the face of his public pillorying reflected a deep-rooted cowardice, a desire to preserve brand value over moral accountability. In this light, Kim Soo Hyun was not just a victim of scandal, he was a scapegoat, sacrificed on the altar of public catharsis. The scandal provided an outlet for societal frustration, economic anxiety, and moral insecurity. He was made to suffer, not because he had sinned, but because others needed to believe that even gods could bleed. For many fans, the idea that Kim Soo Hyun could be involved in a scandal, particularly one involving a minor, felt like a personal betrayal. It wasn't just a question of legality or propriety, it was a rupture in an emotional bond that had been nurtured over years. Fans had invested in him emotionally, financially, and spiritually. They saw in him not just an entertainer, but a symbol of decency in a cynical world. This is the cruel irony of parasocial relationships. They feel real. Fans come to believe they know the celebrity. Every interview, variety show appearance, or social media post becomes evidence of an imagined intimacy. So when allegations arise, even false ones, they hurt. The betrayal feels visceral, even when it's manufactured. The emotional fallout is not rational, it is deeply personal. Garo Sero exploited this emotional vulnerability to maximum effect. Their accusations were not just attacks on Kim Soo Hyun's reputation, they were attacks on his story. They hijacked the narrative his fans had believed in, twisting it into something sordid and sensational. This narrative manipulation weaponized disappointment, turning affection into suspicion and silence into complicity. In South Korea, public morality is both a social performance and a cultural expectation. Celebrities are not simply entertainers, they are moral representatives, held to a standard far beyond that of ordinary citizens. The paradox is striking. While the public demands perfection, it also relishes scandal. The greater the moral height, the more exhilarating the fall. And within this volatile space, figures like Kim Soo Hyun are both idolized and devoured. The outrage surrounding the false allegations against Kim Soo Hyun was rooted less in verified facts and more in collective projection. What was threatened was not just a man's career, but a moral ideal, a symbol carefully cultivated over years. The very suggestion that he may have violated that sacred trust triggered a cultural immune response, swift, unforgiving, and irrational. Even after the claims were disproven, the need to feel betrayed lingered. It no longer mattered whether the story was true. It mattered that the illusion had been punctured. What makes this moral outrage particularly unsettling is its inconsistency. South Korea has a long, well-documented history of actual celebrity misconduct, ranging from DUI offenses and tax evasion to abuse and sexual violence. Yet in many of these instances, powerful celebrities and their agencies have managed to suppress media scrutiny or engineer quiet comebacks. The public morality machine is not impartial. It is selective, often targeting those who cannot or will not retaliate. Kim Soo Hyun, known for his reserved nature and clean public image, was the perfect target. He did not fight back publicly. He did not issue dramatic counter-statements or threaten legal action in the early stages. This silence was misread as guilt, when in fact it reflected a deep cultural conditioning, an understanding that public figures must weather storms with stoicism. But in the court of public opinion, silence is never neutral. It becomes a blank canvas onto which the worst assumptions are projected. The double standard is painfully clear. Actual wrongdoers often walk free if they are powerful or well-connected, while innocent figures like Kim Soo Hyun are punished for the possibility of wrongdoing. This is not morality, it is moral theatre, where outrage becomes a form of entertainment and public shaming a ritual of collective purification. It is impossible to ignore the gendered dynamics that lurked beneath the surface of this scandal. While the false allegations centered on Kim Soo Hyun, the scandal also implicitly involved Kim Soo Hyun, a young actress with her own complicated public image. The insinuation that an adult male was dating a younger underage female celebrity played into long-standing social anxieties about power, age, and gender in Korean entertainment. But rather than sparking a meaningful discussion about consent or exploitation, it became another stage for voyeuristic speculation and moral grandstanding. Interestingly, the outrage was directed almost exclusively at Kim Soo Hyun. Even though the supposed relationship was entirely fabricated, the public was quick to cast the older male as the predator and the younger female as the victim. This binary reflects a disturbing pattern in Korean media. Men are vilified as symbols of corruption, while women are infantilized or demonized, rarely treated as autonomous individuals. Such narratives flatten complexity and erase nuance. They do not reflect genuine concern for gender justice or protection of minors. Instead, they serve as tools of scandal generation, ways to frame stories that ignite outrage, clicks, and judgment. The gender roles assigned in these scandals are less about truth and more about marketable archetypes. In this context, Kim Soo Hyun's downfall became a morality play. He was cast as the fallen prince, the corrupted idol, regardless of truth. His supposed actions were less relevant than what they symbolized: a breach of public trust, a disruption of idealized masculinity, and a violation of the unspoken contract between celebrity and society. Garosero didn't tell the truth. They told a story. In an era where digital attention is currency, emotional storytelling has overtaken rational reporting. Platforms like Garosero don't function as traditional media outlets bound by journalistic integrity. They operate as content machines, optimized to trigger outrage, sadness, and suspicion. Facts are not the foundation of their narratives. Feelings are. In the case of the Kim Soo Hyun scandal, Gasion masterfully wove a tale that resonated emotionally, even if it collapsed under factual scrutiny. Their narrative followed a hauntingly effective formula. A vulnerable young woman, Kim Soo Hyun, who passed away and had already publicly shamed and struggling after her DUI at the end of her life. A powerful man, allegedly dating her when she was underage and then abandoning her during her lowest moments. A grieving relative, Seiron's aunt, speaking in raw, emotional terms, implying betrayal, heartbreak, and moral failure. Even though none of the claims against Kim Soo Hyun held up under legal or factual review, they were perfectly engineered for virality. Garosero never needed to prove a timeline, confirm a relationship, or provide hard evidence. They simply had to suggest, and the audience filled in the rest. Their method is speculative storytelling, dressed up as investigative journalism. Emotionally potent, narratively cohesive, and algorithmically unstoppable. The media didn't correct the record in time because the initial wave of outrage was more profitable. Reaction videos, body language breakdowns, manipulated leaks, and AI-generated voiceovers all flourished in the emotional ecosystem. People consumed content not to be informed, but to feel something. And in this case, what they felt was betrayal and anger. And when the facts finally came out, when Gariosero's claims were disproven and exposed as fabrications, it didn't matter. The emotional impression had already embedded itself in the public consciousness. Once you've cried or raged over a story, you're less likely to admit you were manipulated. You double down, justify your feelings, or simply move on, leaving the truth buried under the rubble of yesterday's drama. This is the tragedy of modern scandal culture. Facts arrive too late. In the Kim Soo Hyun scandal, emotion wasn't just part of the story, it was the story. And in a media ecosystem built to provoke, the truth is bad for business. Someone overseas said that, once you're a hashtag, you're no longer human. The rise of social media has not only connected fans to their idols, it has created digital battlegrounds where parasocial relationships turn toxic, and anonymity enables cruelty without consequence. Kim Soo Hyun's scandal didn't just play out in newsrooms or YouTube videos. It erupted across Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, and YouTube reaction channels, where every gesture, facial expression, or silence became evidence of guilt. Entire threads were dedicated to overanalyzing old interviews, dissecting award show speeches, or revisiting vague moments of chemistry between Kim and Seiron. What began as speculation soon became mob justice. Hashtags trended, often promoted by reactionary fan accounts, gossip aggregators, and anti-fans. These aren't traditional critics, they're part of a digital culture where justice is crowdsourced, truth is optional, and shame is weaponized. In this warped space, fandoms turn on their idols if they feel betrayed. Anti-fans gleefully dogpile on public figures they've never liked, and neutral users join the chaos for likes, retweets, or attention. It becomes impossible to defend yourself in a space that thrives on outrage. Any attempt to clarify or push back is seen as an excuse, a PR move, or further proof of guilt. Silence becomes suspicious, defensiveness becomes confirmation. And when the mob moves on, it leaves behind real human consequences. Reputational destruction, brand withdrawals, and mental health trauma. Kim Soo Hyun found himself at the center of this storm, not because of what he did, but because of who he was. A figure so beloved that his downfall became entertainment. His fandom was not monolithic. While many defended him, others felt betrayed, disappointed, or disillusioned. In parasocial culture, fans believe they are entitled to purity, gratitude, and moral perfection. And when that illusion is broken, they don't simply walk away, they punish. This isn't just a Kim Soo Hyun problem. It's a systemic issue of social media landscape that enables instant judgment without context. Algorithms amplify conflict over resolution, and online anonymity erases empathy. Once you become a trending topic, you stop being a person. You become a symbol for betrayal, for scandal, for hypocrisy. And symbols are easier to destroy than people. The algorithm didn't destroy Kim Soo Hyun's reputation. The digital mob did. In the aftermath of every scandal, there's a collective sigh of relief, a return to business as usual. But if we've learned anything from the Kim Soo Hyun case, it's that business as usual is broken. This wasn't just a celebrity dragged through the mud. This was a mirror held up to us, all of us, exposing the ugly truth behind how we consume, judge, and discard human beings for entertainment. Ask yourself, why did you believe the scandal before checking the facts? Why did you feel compelled to comment, to speculate, to share? What did you gain by watching someone fall? We blame YouTubers, we blame the media, we blame algorithms. But none of this works without our engagement. Outrage is not passive. It's not something that happens to us. It's something we choose to feed, click by click, view by view, share by share. And in that equation, Kim Soo Hyun wasn't a person. He was content. A story arc. A character in a tragedy we helped script. So here's the real question. If truth isn't what drives your outrage, if facts can't undo your first impression, if you forget the person but remember the scandal, what kind of audience have we become? This scandal wasn't just about media ethics, parasocial delusion, or the weaponization of shame. It was about how little it takes for us to turn empathy off. And that should terrify us. Because if someone as beloved, private, and careful as Kim Soo Hyun can be, crucified overnight on the altar of speculation, who's next? And more importantly, what will you do when it's your finger on the trigger? At Critical Thinkers, we stand by one thing, truth that doesn't flinch. Because the moment we stop questioning the system, we become the very system we hate. You're tuned into Truth Unfiltered, brought to you by Critical Thinkers, where the truth speaks louder than the mob. Like, share, subscribe, not just to game the algorithm, but to stay awake in a world built to numb you. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.